All right, and we are live. Thanks for tuning into the Resurgence of the African Mind Book Club, where we seek to liberate African minds with one unit of work at a time. My name is dr.maat.msu, and I'm here. I'm not flying solo, but the co-host, Sister Alima, she couldn't make it tonight. But so the show is still going to go on. I have with me special guests tonight. I'm about to call you Dr. Knowledge Born Allah. Knowledge Born Allah is in the building, and in the building we have my brother Sean P. But Sean P, give me your comedic name. I want you to pronounce your comedic name for me, brother.
I wouldn't call it a comedic name. I wouldn't call it a comedic name per se, but it is Ronnie. Well, it is a name from the remix. It's Ini Heret Kalfani.
Ini Heret Kalfani.
Yeah, it means he who bring back the lost shall lead. Think about that.
I love it. Ini Heret Kalfani. And I need to pronounce that correctly because I'm famous for messing up a name. But we also have Brother Knowledge Born Allah. Brother, unmute your mic and say what's up to the people.
It's definitely an honor and a privilege to be here with my counterparts and someone I admire deeply, Dr. Maat in the building with the Resurgence of the African Mind Book Club. I love that. Like I put my hand over my heart every time I have to say that out loud.
But brother, I took that phrase from you because remember one time we were you were interviewing me on Do the Knowledge Radio, and we were talking about Meltrek, and you was like, Dr. Maat, you said, I'm telling you, you said Meltrek is going to bring about the resurgence of the African mind.
That's right.
Oh man, when you said that, I said, wow, that was a powerful statement. And then when Sister Alima and I talked about forming a book club where we would read these different, works, in order to liberate the minds of our people, we said, well, what should we call it? And I said, we need to call it the resurgence of the African mind. So, brother, I want to publicly thank you for that because it was actually you, you said it and I kind of ran with it. So I want to publicly thank you for that because it's a powerful, powerful title because it ultimately embodies the objective of the book club, to bring about the rebirth of our African mind, to get us back to bring us back to our natural African selves. And so that's the whole objective of the book club. So our current text is The Falsification of African Consciousness by Dr. Amos Wilson. Last week we discussed part one. Part one was entitled European Historiography and Oppression Exposed in African Analysis. African Analysis and Perspective. So we talked about progression and regression in Reconstruction history. And by the way, Dr. Amos Wilson quoted a lot of things from Black Power USA by LeBron Bennett. And he quoted them so much, family, I had to go out and get the book. But anyway, so the progression and regression in Reconstruction history, why study history? That was very important. I think we did a wonderful job explaining and just discussing why it's important to study our history. The socio-political role of historiography, history and psychology, history and psychohistory, language and power, history as mythology, history and societal amnesia, consequences of historical amnesia, changing our name, history and the manipulation of time, history and wealth creation, the economics of maladjustment, and then I think that was it at the end of that part, because it says response period, and I don't think we talked about that. But this week we're going to discuss part two, Eurocentric political dogmatism, its relationship to the mental health diagnosis of African people. The topics are as follow: the political economic necessity of madness, individualism and self-blame, insanity as a model of sanity, insanity as a model of sanity, history, psychology, and ideology, coping with contradictions, procedural liberties, personal restraints, compensation, the politics of diagnosis, the repression of Frankenstein, and lastly, the power of self-transformation. So this is going to be a powerful build today. Kings, I really want to just kind of I don't want to read the pages verbatim. I want this to kind of be like a discussion where we kind of just touch on the different topics that he mentioned in the book. And, you know, if there was a passage that stood out to you, then we can read it. But I just didn't want to I didn't want to go page for page. I kind of wanted it to flow like a discussion, just like we did last week. So let's kick it off. Let's kick it off with the first section. Oh, before we kick it off, let me share my screen. There were a couple of definitions that I want to show the people before we get started. Brothers, let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen, brothers?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So before we get started, here's some key definitions that Dr. Amos Wilson mentions in part 2. The first is individualism. And individualism is defined as taking care of yourself. You know, it is the belief and practice that every person is unique and self-reliant. Personal ineptness, without personal skill or aptitude for a particular task or assignment. Individual moral sensibility is the capacity of a person to perceive the moral issues within a particular area, opinion, action, philosophy, state of mind, political movement, among a few. Cultural commitments, committed to mainstream values and mainstream behavior. Deficiency explanations, defective explanations or explanations lacking some necessary quality or element. Cognitive dissonance, the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change. Procedural liberties, the guarantee that certain procedures will be followed. All right, so these are some key definitions that Dr. Amos Wilson provided in this particular part. And so I wanted to show you guys this, you know, because I'm pretty sure, you know, throughout the discussion, you're going to hear these terms. Part. And so I wanted to show you guys this. Hey, brother, thank you for joining us. Put your mic on mute or. All right, so let's rock and roll, brothers. But nice to have you, is it Malasela? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly, brother. Malasela.
All right, let me do that real quick.
All right, so he's getting ready to do that. All right, so brothers, Knowledge Born, brother Sean P. Let's. Do you want me to spark it off, or do you guys want to start it off?
You know, it don't matter to me, but you can. It's your show.
Yeah, ladies first.
All right, let's rock and roll. So at the beginning,
African women first. Let's say that.
Hey, let's do it. So on page 65, he begins to talk about the political economic necessity of madness. So he's saying that, okay, so let me go back. It says a major departure of Black psychology from Eurocentric psychology or white psychology is the fact that Black psychology is openly and consciously political and recognizes that very basis for what we might call mental problems. So in essence, a lot of our mental problems, and Dr. Amos Wilson argues this in this particular part, that a lot of the mental problems that we have are a result of the political structure that we have. I can honestly say that reading his work, he's making me view things like everything has a political agenda. Behind everything, there's a political agenda. And so he's saying in the first few pages that the mental problems that we have are directly tied to the political structure. And then he said, even the family, even our family relations, he said those are also influenced by the political structure, because he said everything in the Black family is political. I'm at the bottom of the page. He says politics that go on within the Black family. He says structure, the politics of color, the politics of quality of hair, the politics of sexuality and so forth that exist within the Black family reflect to a very great extent the politics of the larger white dominated society in which the Black community finds itself. All right. So a lot of the things that go on inside of the Black family, inside of ourselves, inside of this social system is directly influenced by our political structure. All right. So he's saying that if we're going to, with Eurocentric psychology, when they diagnose a mental illness or mental problem, they typically start with family background, and things of that nature. But Dr. Amos Wilson tells us that the root of our problems it's the political system, it's the social system in which we live. So he's saying, look, let's not diagnose or put a Band-Aid on the effects or the results or the consequences of this system, but let's start with the root in questioning the system. Brothers, do you want to add? Because I feel like I'm kind of rambling.
Nah, you're not rambling at all. I did make this first paragraph of page 65 of post, and the reason that I did that is because we do have a lot of Black psychologists with European minds that misdiagnose us and try to set the standard. This first paragraph sets the agenda for the rest of this chapter.
Absolutely.
And for everyone who actually read it should understand that this very first paragraph is the foundation for the rest of what's going on in this book. So, and the problems in our community. So we're always comparing our issues to people outside of ourselves. It's like, it's like asking people to make potato salad, right? You want to taste everybody's potato salad, but to tell you the truth, certain people can't make potato salad like you make the potato salad. If I'm making any sense.
No, you make perfect sense.
So we can only compare the things that which we have in common with other people. If we don't have the same commonality with these other people, then why are we judging ourselves based on their way of thinking? And I think that we missed the boat a lot. I mean, that's why we got a lot of children, Black children, that go to school and they get misdiagnosed or they get diagnosed with these ADHD problems and so on and so forth.
And learning disabilities. They say you have because we don't learn the same way that they learn, now it's a learning disability.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely wanted to add to that. And as our brother just stated, I mean, that is very, very key. And for many of us who don't have insight into Eurocentric psychology and how, it's used, it can be misused against us. You understand what I'm saying? So as interwoven as we are as Black people, as African people within our family dynamic, we start to look at cultural misrepresentation as a norm. So if we look at cultural misrepresentation, in aligning ourselves with European principles and ideology, we see ourselves outside of the norm. So now we see how we think, act, and feel is abnormal within the construct of the larger European dominated society, just like it speaks to. The first definition that you gave, Dr. Maat, in regards to individualism, this is a foundational point in Eurocentric psychology. As Black people, as African people, the approach to Black psychology is collectivism versus individuality. So it's not just collectivism in regards to how we do commerce or how we share ideas and things. It's in totality. So even our minds, our brains, our hearts, our beings, we represent the sum total of one divine being. You see what I'm saying? That's an African pillar within the framework is universal, which is found through our African tradition. We are the manifestations of one divine being. So, when we start to deal with that from that perspective, we can look at this and say, okay, this is dealing with individual psyches and saying, okay, this one is unique from this one, unique from this one, unique from this one. That's why they say no two snowflakes are the same. So we start to buy into this idea that even though we exist within a family dynamic, even though we exist in a communal dynamic, we don't coexist from the same, mind. And this becomes the separation. You see what I'm saying? And once you get into these things, even as African people, when we look at diagnosis, you understand what I'm saying? We look at it completely different. So, again, another key point that the brother was just speaking about is that you have many people who have gone through that training. And Dr. Bobby Wright's work is the difference between education and training. they went through the training, but they didn't get an education. You understand what I'm saying? So, they're very, very darker skinned Europeans walking around, giving our children Adderall and lithium, and you understand what I'm saying? So seeking again to suppress rather than to address these symptoms and bring about an understanding. One last thing, because I'm rambling too. One last thing.
I do the same thing, brother. It's like I keep going on, and then I just stop myself. Like, wait a minute,
Right.
like this,
One thing I wanted to talk about real quick. It says in the second paragraph, it examines the mother-child relationship as the basis for the personality orientation on the plan of the patient. So again, another key component of Eurocentric psychology is Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud's warped ideas about the relationship between mother and son specifically. You see what I'm saying? Where the Oedipus complex and all these other things, came from, and everything had to deal with sex. You see what I'm saying? So this whole warped view just only, recently got refined, and later psychologists sought to refute those claims. However, they don't go away from them. And if you took in any psychology class, they always give you Freud first. Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt. I got a question though. Didn't Dr. Frances Cress Welsing use a lot of Freud in her work?
Well, as a counterbalance in the scale. You see what I'm saying? When introducing African concepts, especially with people going to go do research, and you had to come through that lane all the way into the graduate level. Dr. Maat has a doctorate degree, so you get all of that. You see what I'm saying? 1, 2, 3, 400, series of work before you can, make a breakthrough and begin in your own lane. And a key point, the Association of Black Psychologists was formed in 1968. You see what I'm saying? So, many of the brothers and sisters did not receive this counterbalance to the American Psychiatric Association until that time. So, just putting things in context in regards to a bulk of what was received and seeing the fallacies in it once, the other counterbalance was established. And, Dr. Amos Wilson was very famous in pointing out these, fallacies that exist.
And so bottom line, Baba is saying on the first page is that that we can't permit Eurocentric, psychology to, or we cannot use Eurocentric psychology or diagnoses that come from Eurocentric psychology to properly assess the mental condition of our people. And I think that Dr. Kobe I know Dr. Kobe Cambon, he's also a psychiatrist or psychologist. He put out a book, and we read that book, the RMA book club. We read that book. It's called The African Personality in America by Dr. Kobe Cambon. And he says the same thing, that we cannot use, Eurocentric psychology, their psychological instruments or diagnoses to properly assess the mental condition of our people. And then he gave us a whole plethora of reasons as to why. But I think Dr. Amos Wilson is driving this point home on this particular page. And then he gets into the political economic necessity of madness. He's saying that in order for the minority to rule the majority, because that's essentially what's going on, right? You have the minority who has all of the power, wealth, and control, and they're ruling the minority, right? And so he's saying in order for that to happen, we have to literally be out of our minds. He says on page 67, he says the imperialistic European must essentially function in a very devilish fashion. He said that is in a fashion that uses deception as its major characteristics. Consequently, he says fundamental values and ways of seeing reality must be reversed. The good must appear to be bad, the dark light. Truth must be taken for lie and the lie for truth. So Dr. Amos Wilson, in a lot of his lectures, he talks about us being out of our African minds and how our minds have been reversed. Things that we see as good are really bad for us, right? And things that are bad, we see as good for us. He also talks about in this particular section how not only do they rule using deception, but they also rule using contradiction and conflicts. Contradictions and conflicts. So I want to get into that a little bit. I know you already touched on individualism, Knowledge Born, but I want to get into contradictions and conflicts. There are a lot of contradictions when you analyze, even when you just say the Pledge of Allegiance. You see a lot of contradictions. You know, when they say "in liberty and justice for all," and you sitting back looking like, well, wait a minute, Zimmerman got off, and you know the police officers that shot so and so got off. So what do you mean liberty and justice for all? That's a major. It's actually a lie, but you could also call it a contradiction when they say that we live in the land of opportunity. Opportunity for who? Opportunity for people who come from a certain ethnicity and class, yes, but it's not the land of opportunity for all. So, you know, you see a lot of when you sit and you analyze the social system or this Eurocentric or Euro-American social system, you see a lot of lies, and you can identify a lot of lies and a lot of contradictions. So I'm looking at page is coping with contradictions, because I had some contradictions highlighted that Baba brought out. He says we must recognize that many Americans have a stake in ensuring the continuation of the failure of large segments of its population. He said, particularly of the African American population. We must recognize that contradiction in this society is of major importance in determining the problems of our communities. He said that it is the people without love who talk about love the most. It is the people who are ready to go to war and have gone to war and destroy hundreds and thousands who talk about peace. It is the people who destroy our children's minds in school who talk a great deal about education. And we will see these kinds of contradictions going on and on repeatedly. He says we will even see in the very legal structure of the system its contradictions, which conspire to destroy those who are not a part of the ruling class or group. And so, you know, the European or European American has been able to rule the majority using contradictions, conflicts, and deceptions. Does anyone want to add to that?
I got a little point. I've also been dipping into Urugu, which I know that's coming up.
Yes,
that's coming up down the pipe. And there was a point in there where Dr. Ani was talking about how, given the European, there's the Asili, Utama Rojo, and Utama Wazo, and given the Asili, the cultural seed, of the European and the European cultural spirit, and the Utama Rojo, and the cultural thought, and the Utama Wazo, those again, you're talking about contradictions. He's basically saying that, given that Asili, the European has to lie. And it makes sense politically that if you're trying to dominate a larger group, you use a tactic that we're all familiar with, this phrase, divide and conquer. So you divide different groups, Boyce Watkins versus Umar Johnson, or you know, in those two camps, or people who are from one economic background, who are non-white versus another group from a different economic background, or people who are you know, the elections coming up, people who are leaning to the left, people who are leaning to the right. But at the end of the day, they're all non-white, and they all get mistreated in this global system of white supremacy. So I mean, it's important for them to invest, to first of all, to deceive, to confuse, to introduce contradictions into other people's thinking, and be able to basically be two-faced. They have to lie. They have to speak with what they call forked tongue in order to pull this off. You know, they talk about high-minded ideals, but the reality is that they don't live up to those high-minded ideals. You know, like you're talking about an election, like, you know, people speak with these grand statements, but then there's this other phrase that comes up, realpolitik, meaning that, you know, the reality is that, you know, you got to get in there and be dirty and do a lot of things that don't seem very high-minded, moralistic, in order to keep things moving. So they do that, and in order for a person to survive within the global Skinner box, who is non-white, that person has to do some of that as well. And that's where the being out of one's mind starts to set in, because that means not working together with your brother or sister and trying to overthrow this system. You're just trying to survive in the system.
Absolutely. And no, I agree with that. Brother Sean P, I saw that you unmuted your mic. Did you want to add, brother?
Well, to your point that you've already made about deception, this false reality that we live in under the pretense of African American and hyphenated name. You go back and look at Roosevelt. He made a speech in regard to the hyphenated name. He did not want to accept, or his his whole premise in that speech was to degrade those who would use the hyphenated name as recognition to the ties of the country. So African American was not seen as a pure American. You see the deception there. Like, what really is an American? It's fictitious. You know, I don't want to say too much about American and so forth and these things that they throw out, because I got an article coming out soon. It's already written and stuff, but it's going to be published on Brother Ben's his journal when it comes out next year. So soon as he goes up, that's going to come out. But I asked the question, what is it to be an American? What does it take to be an American? Think about that. We just said deception, right? So
Right.
what are we defining when we say we're an American? When we have our own brothers and sisters denouncing the African and turning around and saying that I'm an American, or I'm a Christian, or I'm this, or I'm that. What is it to be an American? If we're, like you said earlier, they played the song "I'm Proud to Be an American." I think they used to play it at football games and stuff, right? When they represent the military and so forth, right? But what is it to really be American? What was its greatest finding to history? Deception, killing, all kinds of things that were against what we are today, or what our principles are as Africans, because we are African first. If they want to hashtag us with the American part, that is the least thing we are.
Right.
Because of where we put our feet at. Because we're here does not mean that we're American. We're still we're deceived thinking that we're American. So I just wanted to say that the deception plays a big part of it, because it also plays a part of in every phase of our life: education, spiritually, economically, in our fake neighborhoods that we want to call community.
Right.
And you know what I'm saying? Like, it's all deceiving. We're deceived. So we can't get out of the conditions that we're in because of these main principles that he outlined on page 67 and going forward. That's it.
No, I agree 100% with that. What does it mean to be American? Because you were born on this particular landmass? Like you said, what does it really mean, to be an American? That's a profound question. But do you, in your article, do you kind of leave it as like an open-ended question, or do you go in and you answer the question?
I'm doing a two-part to the article. So I asked the question, generally speaking, and just to get people to think. Like, we're not thinking in the terms of where we're supposed to be thinking. If we're supposed to be unlearning and relearning, then this is a question that we should be asking ourselves, right? So
Right.
if we're going to per se take on a new identity, because even in chapter 1, he talks about changing your name.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's part of removing the power of their deception from us, changing our names. Because remember, they took our names from us. So now we're taking our names back. So if we have the power to take our names back, then we have the power to not be deceived any further. And it starts there. So these little things. So I asked the question to plant the seed, because nobody has really harped on what is it to be an American? Like, what is the other half of that? But then what is it to be African? There's so many pluses to being centered in your Africanness that you don't want to be American no more once you realize all of these things that you have in front of you. Our ancestors, the names that y'all are naming, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, Marima Annie, Dr. Wilson, and the others. You're naming people who have fought for us to reclaim our Africanness.
That's right.
So it's a big deal to me to ask us, what is it to be an American? Why are we so stuck on trying to be a hyphenated person when they delegated a whole lecture toward demonizing the hyphenated person in history?
I got a couple points on that. Somebody have the mic on?
Yeah, you like echoing out, brother.
All right. So the mentor, formally or informally, of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing was Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., because he's the one that inspired her with the concept of that racism, white supremacy is a global system.
Right.
And one of the things that Neely Fuller Jr. says is that, he too asks, what is an American? What is an African? What is an Asian? And what he seems to be hinting at in these questions, almost like they're Socratic questions, is that these are all social constructs that we sort of tacitly agree to. And if we start to rail against those social constructs, we get in trouble, because we are going against what the white supremacists will allow us to do. So if we are allowed to change our name, then great. We're going to some office and we're filling out paperwork, and then we legally change our name, and then we have to go and change all of our credit cards and all of our other things. And so great, we have changed our name in an effort to reestablish some of that Africanity that we need, some of that cultural orientation, some of that was the African self-consciousness, ASC, that Dr. Kobe Kanban talks about. So we can go through that process, and it is a necessary process on some level to have a more African-centered cultural orientation before we can move into doing some of the economic building and political building, because if your head's not in the right place, you're going to build the wrong things for the wrong people, the wrong aim. But also, there's this concern that that at the end of the day, this global system, this Skinner box, is still present while we are attempting to build. And whatever we are trying to do, even having this Google Hangout right here, or talking about changing our names and going to like some office and changing our names, we're doing that because the white supremacists allow us to do that. At the end of the day, we are still, talking about language of power from the previous section, we are still speaking English. We're still writing with the Roman alphabet. We're still buying things and selling things, exchanging legal tender that has dead white men's faces on it. We're still so deeply ensconced in this system. We're still deeply ensconced in, I guess, what Dr. Amos would call the madness, that is going to take a lot of work and transformation to do that. So I feel like I'm rambling right now too. But
Hey,
a couple other points though too. I wanted to speak to those, but I'm trying to remember what all the points were.
All right, but you got to move on, brother, because it's not going to be a long hangout.
All right. I'm done.
No, I mean, finish your points. I want you to finish your points, but it's just, we're not going to be on here for a long time. So, but I want you to finish the points that you were trying to make.
But I think that it's important to wrap it up. It's important to reestablish that Africanity. But we still have to be mindful that it's a long road ahead, and that there are going to be great challenges. The moment that we're doing something that truly is powerful is a moment we're going to meet with the greatest resistance.
Mm.
I
Well,
wanted to add real quick, Dr. Maat, that's why it's also essential to learn an African language as well, so that we can build speech communities where we can communicate in our language, which would also help transcend us into our Africanness.
no, I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that. I wanted to move on to individualism and self-blame. Earlier, I provided the viewers with the definition of individualism, and I know that Brother Knowledge Born touched on it, but individualism, or the ideology of individualism, and that's really a European ideology. As Knowledge Born stated earlier, we come from, a people that had a collective mentality or communal mindset. And individualism is an ideology that was actually, imposed on us by European people. So Dr. Amos Wilson talks about individualism, I think from page 66 all the way to page 70. And he says that he's talking about individualism in the context of success and failures, personal achievement and personal failures. So he's saying that because the European pushes this idea or ideology of individualism, when we succeed, we think it's because of us, our own personal achievements, right? And when we fail, we think that it's something that we did. He calls it a individual moral sensibility. So we think that it was some failure, along the lines, something that we must have done to put ourselves in a certain condition. And he tells us that this is inaccurate. He said, at the end of the day, when individuals succeed or fail, it's a direct result of the social system, right? That the individual resides in. Okay, he's saying that it's really a reflection of the social system, because he said at the end of the day, individuals, we don't live in vacuums. These were his exact words, I believe, on page 68 or 69. He said we don't exist, in outer space or in vacuum. So when individuals fail, you have to look at the system in which they reside. Any of the brothers want to add to that?
Nah, I think you opened and closed that door.
Open and close that door. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, so our individuality is, I think, tied to our Africanity, like we were saying before. And then I believe somebody brought up, like, why be an American? One of the ideas that comes to mind, like Professor James Small talks about this, like, that American is the nationality. And simply because, to be blunt, we built this stuff for free. The fact that we have our unique experience of being over here for centuries, building this country up, that's part of the reason why people may want to maintain that hyphen. But to talk about how that would connect to us working with our counterparts over on the continent, I mean, we still need to do that. So I mean, that's the struggle, is that we're stuck in this system where, yes, we have to navigate it and we have to deal with, surviving in this Skinner box where they're asking us to do things and prize our individual achievement. But at the same time, we need to reach across to the continent and to all the different nations on the continent, where they are not so individualistic, even though they are still over on the continent and throughout the diaspora are dealing with colonization. So colonization on the continent, and then different forms of oppression throughout the diaspora, and then like our unique experience here in America.
Did you want to add anything? I mean, I know you kind of went back, if I'm not mistaken, you kind of went back to the whole argument about like hyphenating the African and American. Did you have anything you wanted to add regarding individualism and self-blame?
Let me see here. That I was trying to work that in by talking about how we behave over here, but I think I'm gonna back down on that.
All right. All right, so the next section is insanity as a model of sanity. So I want to read this. I actually highlighted this and I put an asterisk next to it. Dr. Amos Wilson says that the most insane people on the earth today are used as models for sanity. He says the sanity of the racist European itself is not questioned. Insanity of European normality is not questioned. The possibility that what we call normal is itself insane is not questioned. That the organization of this society, the nature of its human relations, the structure of its economic systems, the values that motivate it are a result of the madness of a people. And see, I cannot wait until we read Dr. Marimba Annie's book, The Yorugu, because she's going to get into their psychology and their history in the culture that flowed from their psychology and their history.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, and so I mean, I thought that this paragraph was very profound, because he's saying, look, these people are out of their minds, but yet they've become the models of sanity. Yet they've become the models of normality. Yet they've become the standard. This is his words, the standard against which we measure ourselves as a people, and are used as models for us to determine the way we wish our children to behave.
And
so
what did he say, Dr. Maat? He said they use what is the one key tool that they use? TV.
Yes. Come on, talk about it, brother.
The biggest key that they use is TV. They want us to sit in front of the TV and let them tell us how a family structure, or program us to learn how a family structure or setting should be. And then Dr. Amos Wilson also says that is not normality. Whose normality is that? Where's the person interrupting the other person while they're talking? Where's the discontent and the disagreement? Where's the well, I don't think this is that, or the differences with the attitudes with the children. That's normality, because we're watching this TV program. We're like, oh, I wish our family was like that. Or our sisters are like, I wish my man acted like this. Or our brothers is like, I wish my woman cooked and did these things like this. That's not the normality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And brother, when I read this paragraph, I thought about the Cosby Show. Remember, both the parents, the mother was a lawyer, the father was a doctor. The kids went to Harvard and Yale and played but that wasn't the reality. And remember, that show came on, I believe, in the 80s, right?
The 80s.
And think about what was going on in the 80s. That's when we got hit with, the crack epidemic and mass incarceration. So that wasn't a realistic view, right? Or projection of the Black family during that time.
Yeah, not for us at all.
No.
But I'm gonna go back a little bit further, and because I was having this discussion with Saber Yara Aneb earlier today, he said the same thing you did. He said, "What about the Cosby Show?" Because I was telling him we were reading this particular chapter, and I'm picking his brain. He's a wise fact, so he's my elder. I'm picking his brain. I'm trying to learn from him and everything. But he said exactly what you said, Dr. Maat. Exactly. It just shows the wavelength that everybody is on right here. It is that, but he also mentioned Good Times. He says, "Did you know a white man wrote Good Times?"
Wow.
Nah.
Sure did.
I said, nah, I didn't think that he could write that.
Good Times, Sanford and Son, the Jeffersons, all of those shows was made by 3 Jews. The same 3 Jews made all of them shows. If you see any of them shows, you see some of the same characters pop up in all of those shows. The Cosby Show was the first Black show that was made. Good Times was the first Black family show that, centered around, Black family. That was the first Black family show on television. But the Cosby Show was made by Black people. The Jeffersons and What's Happening and all of them was made by the same Jews. So-called Jews.
I think that's kind of an interesting point. What Bill Cosby was trying to do, I remember, I think, Dr. Maat, you were saying that it wasn't a realistic representation of the Black family at that time in the 80s. I think what Bill Cosby was trying to do was he was trying to push people's paradigm of what the Black family could or should be in a different direction. He was trying to provide that different vision with the Cosby Show and then the spinoff, A Different World. You know, like a lot of young people watched that, and that kind of inspired them to go off and go to college, to go to an HBCU or whatever. And then we fast forward to all the mess that he's going through today, and we wonder, you know, what happened, you know? And I kind of think, I don't want to go out there and be a conspiracy theorist, but there is that time when he tried to buy NBC, and that he was, if he had that network, that platform, then he could put a whole slew of programming on and change people's mindset through the TV about, you know, what a Black family should look like.
I'm gonna give you something real quick about that. It goes back to the point where we are modeling our sanity after something that's not our reality. That whole era. Now, granted, I get what you're saying, and many people will agree with what you're saying about the conspiracy perspective and Cosby situation. But the intent of that show at that time, like, just to make the argument, is it wasn't our reality. Our reality was much tougher. We were facing so much. Single parent homes. You know, that how do we deal with that? Psychological issues with our kids. How you deal with that? How do you deal with one income and that income taking you all the way down to just piss poor? Now you're living in the projects and you're trying to raise 3 kids on your own with a husband calling you from jail and who's trying to get out of jail, needs a lawyer, and you got to go to work every day, and you got a 6-year-old son coming home from school that's got a key, and he got to let himself in the house and tend to himself until you get off at 7. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's reality. And I'm saying that because that was me. Like, my grandmother would go to work at 7 o'clock at 10 o'clock at night, and then get home at 7 a.m. So I'm at home I'm at home literally by myself because my mom wasn't around then at that time. That was my reality. Then her schedule changed. Then she was working mornings and then getting off late. So I'm beating her home. Then that was my reality. Then they put her back on the 10 o'clock thing. I had a cousin who became a crack addict at that time, 16 years old. He was facing real bad psychological issues because he watched his mother get killed in his face as a child. And that was reality. And he could never shake that. He couldn't get help because nobody could afford to get him help. So I'm saying that to say, like, I know Cosby's intent was good. Beautiful show. It did inspire a lot. But at the same time, a lot of us try to relate to it too bad. And we're in this victimized position of trying to be more like them than ourselves because we're not dealing with our reality.
What is being like ourselves?
Being like ourselves is identifying with who we really are, not what somebody wants us to be. Right. So in order of being the best example of being ourselves, and that I can give you right now off the top of my head, is our women letting their hair go.
Come on.
You know what I'm saying? Real quick, just a quick one. Our women letting our hair go, not letting people define us by their terms. So, you know, that's being ourselves. We have been defined by other people for so long that we don't know who it is or what it is to be ourselves. So taking those steps, reclaiming that goes back to the other point, reclaiming our sanity of what reality is to us. And real quick, I don't want to change what you may say behind that, but on page 72 at the top, when he ends this segment, he says, "We know that imperialist Europeans stole nations and destroyed hundreds of thousands of Amerindians, Africans, and other peoples, as whose every step in other people's nations has done little but destroy the local people, drive them out of their minds, destroy their cultures, and rob them of their wealth. And yet these people are held up as normal and are used as the standard against which we measure ourselves as people. and are used as models for us to determine the way we wish our children to behave. That is the truth. That is the truth. That top paragraph right there speaks to the whole argument or anything that we basically been saying. But I digress.
No, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. So I want to move on to the next section. The next section, history, psychology, and ideology. He was saying in this particular paragraph, first paragraph, he says, if we look at the history of European imperialists, we see their psychology. I know that Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, even Dr. Naeem Akbar and Dr. Marimba Annie, they all say that. Even Dr. Ben, they've all encouraged us to study European history so that we can get an understanding of their psychology. So they've always said that. And he kind of emphasizes this in the first paragraph. So he says, read their history to get their psychology. And at the bottom of the first paragraph, he says, we must then recognize that given this history and the desire on the part of the hegemonic European to maintain the status quo, the ideologies and other institutions created by them are created and maintained as a means of supporting the status quo. So, Brother Sean P., I thought about the educational system. Now, there's several institutions. You got the educational system, you got the media, you have religious institutions, right? Dr. Amos Wilson tells us that European historiography is also a type of institution. So we have to keep in mind that all of these different institutions that they have created, they've created them with the objective to maintain the status quo, i.e. to maintain how things are, right? How things are. And or what's normal, or what's acceptable, the status quo. So then he gets into contradictions on page 73. But I feel like we talked about contradictions a while ago, how this system is full of contradictions. So I want to move on from there. On page 74, he talks about self-hatred. And he says that self-hatred is a social disease. I know that a lot of us will say, oh, so-and-so, they are a victim of self-hate, or they're full of self-hate. But what we don't understand is that the self-hate that different individuals within our community carry, it spreads. Because if they hate themselves and they go out here and they hate other people, they'll go out here and rob people, hurt people, or do certain things to people because they hate themselves. So he talks about that in this particular paragraph. And then another subsection, I want to move on to that when it's called coping with contradictions. Coping with contradictions. And I thought about something that Knowledge Born said earlier today when we first started the discussion. He said that Dr. Amos Wilson stepped on a lot of toes. He said that he was disliked by a lot of his peers because of the things that he said. In this particular section, he kind of goes at Black nationalists and also Afrocentrists, right? I'm looking at the bottom. I'm at the bottom of page 75, where he starts talking about feel-good history, right? So he's saying that the way we deal, or the way we cope with the contradictions in this system, right? He said, one is fear. We become a very fearful people. And I actually created a Facebook post a few days ago talking about fear. And Brother Sean P., everything that I said in that video, he confirmed that. I'm looking at the top of page 175, this particular, the first paragraph at the top of page 75, where he talks about the fear and how Black people, how we're filled with fear. And actually, Brother Sean P., when I put that video out there, I got a lot of negative feedback. I got a lot of positive feedback, but then I had people inbox me stuff. Oh, Black people, we're not scared. We're not scared. We don't have fear. We are fearless people. You don't know your history. But here it is. You have Dr. Amos Wilson at the top of page 75. He says that we have a fear. He said we have a fear of trusting and uniting with each other. We have a fear of coming together and solving our problems. So he was saying that fear is one consequence of, or one method to coping with contradictions. He also says that we've developed like this feel-good history. So he gets into like Black nationalism and Afrocentricity and how we gloat and glow about our past right. Achievements. And so he's saying like, well, what is feel-good history doing for us? Like, yeah, it's great. And I mean, this is good information. It's great to know about our achievements, And Dr. Naeem Akbar in his book, Know Thyself, he says that we got to know about our achievements because this is how you perpetuate a legacy of competence, right? So you got to know about, your achievements, so you can have a positive sense of self, a positive self concept, high self-esteem, right? A strong self-identity. So you have to know about your achievements, but we can't stay stuck there, and not deal with our current problems because we're stuck in the past. We're stuck on what we did thousands of years ago, that we're so stuck on what we did thousands of years ago that we can't move forward.
Right.
So he starts talking about Black nationalism. Did you want to add to that, Brother Sean P?
I do, because it's what he says makes sense, because we do have a frame of mind based on certain teachings in the community where all it is feel good information. Okay, we realize that I'm gonna say the Egyptians, or they call themselves the Remnants, they were Black. They established this great dynastic periods up until the 13th century before the arrival of outsiders and the oncoming of the Hyksos and so on. So, because of that information, why do we study Kemet today? The number one reason that anyone should take up on the course of study, because he says Egypt and he says Ghana.
Yeah.
Those are the two things that he says. So why would we study Kemet and Ghana? We need to study the greatness to pull from its great, what got it there and what made it fall. If we're not studying what got it there and what made it fall, then what use is it to know what got it there?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So we have to look at the rise as well as the fall. So we must dissect the 13th dynastic period just like we would do when Narmer united the upper and lower Kemet. And that's the key to this whole thing with where we are today. What are we gonna do about taking the feel good information, applying it to our daily lives, but also studying that which is critical of everything that happened to us and digesting it the same way? We need to know how we failed. That is how we're going to solve the tough issues and put ourselves in a better position than where we are. But I do want to jump to 85, where he says, consequently, it is not enough to succeed in the society or to fail. Some people succeed at failing. The white man tells us we're no good, and we work very hard showing him he's right. Yes, we find a parallel situation in many parent-child situations. You will never be nothing, and the child shows them with a vengeance how it will be nothing. He says, I am going to make you see, mama, every day that I'm nothing. I am going to flaunt my nothingness in your face. I'm going to make you cry every night, and I'm going to make you go to the jail and try to get me out because you told me I was just like my daddy, no good, going nowhere, or else you would do it the other way. I'm going to show you how good I am. And he succeeds, but he succeeds with an emptiness in his heart and in his mind. Our victory leaves the taste of ashes in our mouths. We wonder where this happiness went, and we say, is this all there is to it? Nothing hurts like failing unless it's success. Many of us found out when we broke into white midstream America that there is just as much hell in there as it was where we were to begin with. Now, the reason that I said that is it goes back to what we were just mentioning about when we were talking about feel good history and studying Kemet and Ghana and trying to see where we are, where we failing. That's the relationship that we're at right now with Mama Africa. We're like, well, I'm going to show you how good we can be over here, Mama. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need you no more, Mama. Some of us are. Some of us are looking back to Africa and like, I don't need to identify with you no more, Mama. I'm going to be an Aboriginal, Mama. I'm going to be an Indigenous, Mama. I'm going to be a Jew, Mama. I don't want to be none of that, Mama. I'm going to be my own person now, Mama, and I'm going to make you cry every night. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm pulling from when we do that. Now I can use some other examples, but I'm gonna leave it right there.
No, that was powerful, but I didn't even, and that's why I love having discussions, on reading material. You get what I'm saying? Because then people bring different perspectives, things you never thought about. Like when I read that paragraph, I didn't make that connection at all. Like that was a great example, Brother Sean P. Beautiful example. Beautiful example. All right. So I think we have like 2 sections left: procedural liberties and personal restraints. I love this section. He goes into the Constitution of the United States, and he says that, as beautiful as it may sound, he says it is ultimately an elitist document, right? He says the Constitution of our nation guarantees what we call procedural liberties, while not guaranteeing what we may call the real nitty-gritty substantial liberties, right? So he's saying that the Constitution guarantees us certain procedural rights and rules. And he gave us an example. He said, okay, like when you're getting ready, when you're getting arrested, right, they may read you your Miranda rights. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get, I guess, hold on, let me look. He said that's not necessarily meaning that you're going to get released or get off. He gets into the justice system, and he says, while we may go through the procedure, that does not guarantee justice, right? You're just going through the procedure. So he says, consequently, the justice and legal establishments become the very sources of injustice and illegality. Sorry, guys. We are therein faced with the contradiction wherein the very law and order that is written into the Constitution becomes a double standard. So basically, he's saying that, look, we had this Constitution and we have these laws written on a piece of paper, but he's saying that, look, it doesn't matter if the law is written in neutral terms, right? He says what really matters is whether the law is enforced non-discriminately, and we know that it's not, right? He says, and this society is one that is famous for writing beautiful laws which are enforced in a which are enforced in a non-equal fashion. Does any other brothers want to expound on that? I mean, it's a whole lot we could say about that. I mean, I have case after case after case. Dr. Michelle Alexander, in her book, The New Jim Crow, she gives you, she lists so many cases to show that that European people make out better in every step of the judicial process, as opposed to, Black and brown people. I think she did a wonderful job proving that point in her book, The New Jim Crow. I highly recommend that you all read that book. But does anyone want to elaborate on this? Because I'm pretty sure we can. We probably could go on and on and on and on and on, in regards to this wicked justice system.
Well, I think early on in the book, Dr. Amos Wilson was saying that laws are only as strong as the enforcers of those laws. And so if these law enforcers are doing nothing more but just upholding the existing system as opposed to actually providing true justice, then that's what you're gonna get.
Exactly.
And then that's what makes people wonder, okay, well, when I think about that, it's like, okay, we need to get better lawmakers in place. So that means, this election is coming up. We got to vote for some folks that are actually going to put new laws on the books. But the existing laws, as they're being enforced, aren't doing us no good. So I don't even know if that's going to work. It's not that I'm telling anybody not to vote, but it's just a wonder. The question in my mind is like, who are we really voting for, and what are they going to do once they get in office? We should still, we should still vote. That's important, but we should do other things along with voting in order to try and change how these laws get enforced. And in addition to trying to reclaim our Africanity, we've got to do something to, I guess, I don't want to say hold them accountable, because that just sounds like a made up phrase that doesn't really mean anything. But we have to do something more in order to push and make sure that the laws are enforced fairly. I'm not exactly sure what that is at the moment, because I know that there's that economic and political piece, but I kind of feel like if we don't trust each other, it's difficult to do group economics and build, and then have the money to push candidates and different policies and causes around. So that's my point right there.
Yeah, and then look, he moves on to talk about the police and how the police are used as a means of maintaining the social status quo and social order. He says not so much when a person is poorly disturbing the peace, but where the person threatens to disturb the social system itself. And so he gets into the police and talks about them and how, how when they enforce the law, how they don't enforce it discriminately. So he talks about that. He goes on to talk about compensation. I think we already kind of touched on that. Dr. Amos Wilson, and this is no diss, but he's very repetitive. So he may talk about it like in the beginning, of the chapter, and then he'll touch on it again in the middle, then he'll touch on it again, in the end. So he talked about compensation already, and we touched on that. You guys want to get into the politics of diagnosis? I'm all the way on page 86. We talks about the politics of diagnosis. I think we kind of touched on that at the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah, we did. We did, and we got into the police as well. What
Yeah.
I wanted to skip to where he gets into on page at the end, really 92, where he goes in and he basically talks about this mirror, and it says, therefore, the patient's face is a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And in that face, we see our own madness. It mocks us. We feel a compulsion to break it into 1,000 pieces. We want to shoot it and destroy it because it tells us something we don't want to hear about ourselves. We want to lock them up and put them away because they indicate our own failings as a society. We want to chuck it and make it invisible. The face in the mirror our people reflect, we want to avoid. We diagnose the patient. We see the reflection as a property of the mirror and as a part of its nature. It says nothing about us. We would like to think. In other words, then when we look at the patient we diagnose, we do not wish to admit a reflection of our own responsibility there. We want to say that what is reflected itself represents the nature of the patients. And I think this goes back to the black police officer, the black psychiatrist, the black teacher, the black preacher, the black father, mother, sister, brother, auntie, uncle, all of us as a whole, is that when we're really diagnosing other people, because we're really good at diagnosing other people,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? Because really we're diagnosing ourselves. So we, of course, we can look at somebody else's problems and give them all the answers in the world. But when we go back and we look at, like I said, for instance, the police officer and the a lawyer per se, or a black judge, let's just deal with that since he mentioned that on the other pages, is that when you see somebody that looks like you, reminds you of you, and you have all of these emotional feelings inside, those will automatically have you reject. That's why we have a problem with black police officers more faster than we do white police officers in urban cities, because they feel like they got to prove a point to the white police officer and or the white jurors or the white lawyers or so on and so forth. They really got to stick it to us. And I think that this mirror is a way for us to really kind of put all of this into perspective. I think that we're losing ourselves when we get away from ourselves. And I'm glad that he disses everybody because we have to reevaluate everything that we're doing going forward in order to really be effective in trying to find a solution to solve these tough problems that we're facing here in America.
I agree. I couldn't agree with you more, brother. I couldn't agree with you more. So let me, God daggone. Okay. So this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to close out Brother Sean P. with the last paragraph where he talks about us taking responsibility for our actions. He says, I don't want to leave you with the impression that we are passive people who are totally manipulated by a Eurocentric structure and who are created totally by the white devil. He said, we as a people must examine ourselves and see to what extent we have participated in the creation of what he calls the monster. He says we must look at the nature and type of leadership we have provided that has helped to maintain this situation as well. We must look at the responsibility that we have ignored and that we have denied exists as a people, and look at the opportunities for controlling ourselves and for developing a different kind of people. Therefore, it is not only the white man who cannot sleep at night, we also are unable to sleep at night either, because of part of the situation that we face is also our responsibility as well. So he's saying right here that we have to take responsibility for the hand that we've played in our own oppression. Because we're so quick, brother Ini Harit Falani. It's Falani, right?
Califani.
Califani. All right, I'm gonna get there. But King, he's basically saying that we have to hold ourselves responsible for the hand that we played in our own condition. And he talks a lot about Black leadership. I know even in Blueprint for Black Power, I believe in the last chapter, chapter 32, he talks about the different styles of leadership. So he talks about the conservative, the assimilationist, and then the Black nationalist. And he was saying, like he did, he compared and contrasted the different styles of leadership. And he talked about how Black people are in a bad situation right now. I don't want to say primarily, but in huge part of because of the leadership. And so he ends, this chapter with talking about, examining ourselves and the power of self-transformation, and he says that, look, if we transform ourselves and we focus on ourselves and transform ourselves, then we're ultimately going to transform the people that we deal with, right? Not that we want to transform the people that we deal with, but it would at least transform how they deal with us, right? If we were to transform ourselves collectively. So he's saying we have to hold ourselves accountable. So many times we hear the man did this, the man did that, the white man did this, the white man did that. And yes, he did all of those things. But what have we done? A lot of people, we have an issue with personal accountability, Brother Sean P. In my opinion, 2000 and 2012. I think this was in December 2012, when I was at a gas station in Baltimore City. It wasn't a white dude that ran up to me, with a gun trying to kidnap me. You get what I'm saying, Brother Sean P?
Absolutely.
This was a brother that ran up on me. I could still see, and I'm out there tussling with him. He was trying to pull his gun out, and I grabbed him like this, and he was a skinny little thing, so he's trying to pull. And I'm holding him, and we're tussling at the gas station. The lady started screaming, "Oh my gosh, something's going on over there. Somebody call the police," or whatever. And then he broke free and he ran and he threw his gun behind the supermarket that was a block away from the gas station. And when the police came, and I said, "Hey, he ran in that direction," someone had said told the police that he threw something behind the supermarket and they found a gun. But I say all that to say that we got issues too now, and I'm not saying that these issues weren't created by external forces, right? I'm not dismissing that at all. But we have to look at ourselves. We have to take a close look at ourselves and begin to hold ourselves, accountable and responsible for our actions, and hold ourselves accountable and responsible for cleaning up our communities. Dr. Amos Wilson at the end, he talks about, matter of fact, I want to read it, the last paragraph. I think it was like the last paragraph. He says,
before you do that,
mm-hmm.
You make some sense when you say we got to look at ourselves. One thing that I say to that is when people when they hit me with the white man, it shows me our own level of ignorance and understanding of anything that's going on.
Right.
If anybody use that's where the wall is. This is God to them now. The white man is God or the devil to them now. So now they're a superpower.
Come on.
You just empowered him by saying the white man, you putting all the blame, all the hurt, all the troubles that you're facing on this person, and you're saying they're in control of you now, and you're empowering them so they can just walk all over you. So when I hear that, I'm like, come on, yo. They're responsible for the social structure around us.
That's right.
And they can compress us in this box. However, we can fight them back by doing the things that they think that they can deny us of. But then is it them letting us out or us forcing ourselves out? So we really have to analyze our own issues and faults. So I totally agree. But I think I know where you're getting ready to go. So I'm waiting on you to read that little last part.
Oh yeah. You know I am. So he says, for that we must hold ourselves responsible. Is that where you are? Yep. So he says, for that we must hold ourselves responsible. For the madness and disorganization that flow from that, we must hold ourselves responsible. For not capturing economic and social control of our communities, and for not building up Pan-Africanism, and for not building up our brains and studying and reading and writing and organizing and developing. We must hold ourselves responsible in part for that madness. He says, I therefore suggest that the issue then is not so much one of diagnosis of the patient, but a diagnosis of ourselves, a diagnosis of the system, and more so than that, getting on with the work of revolution. So I thought that was powerful, a powerful closing. And so he's saying, look, we got to look at ourselves and hold ourselves accountable. And I agree with you, Brother Sean P., that we give the white man too much power. You know, oh, he's the God. I remember Dr. Amos Wilson in his lecture, The Falsification of African Consciousness. He said the white man is a God. He said that we created and a God that we must destroy. So we gave him that power. You know, a lot of people, oh, he went around and did all these things. But, you know, I remember reading in chapter 1 of the Blueprint for Black Power, Dr. Amos Wilson tells us that, you know, oppressed people could not be oppressed without their own participation, that it wouldn't be possible, that they have to be complicit in their own oppression, or else it wouldn't be possible. So let me ask you a question. Lastly, do you think, going back to what, I know a lot of people might get on me, Kanye West, not the whole that slavery was a choice, right? But remember when he started talking about the mental condition of our people, and he was like, dang, you know, we were on a plantation, and it may have been 50 or 100 of us and like 3 of them. You know, he was saying that kind of goes to show you how mentally enslaved, you know, we were at that particular time. So I just kind of feel like, you know, to some degree, and I know Kanye is all over the place, you know, he's all over the place.
Right. Let's just say it. Let's say it. He was right.
Yeah, he was. I didn't want to say it.
I know, but let's just say that he was right.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it.
And at times on the plantation, we did outnumber the European, and we did not do nothing. Now, to his point, he was right in that perspective.
Right.
To argue against that point, I would say we were preconditioned before arriving to that particular state where we would be outnumbering them, meaning they knew who they had, where, when, what, and how. They knew the rebellious type of an African from the west coast of Africa, and they knew the ones that would openly submit. The openly submit would always be in a position where they fared higher in numbers than the others. Now, you may have a bad apple or two that want to revolt or incite, but still, when you have these other people that you're playing with them, you know, then that transpires in the situations that you have. So in a sense, out of his ignorance, he was right. And then in a sense, you could argue against that because of the type of people that they were putting in these positions and that were caning and growing tobacco or corn or cotton or whatever they were doing, because we do have to say he was right in the essence. And I'm gonna leave it at that, even though, you know, there's part of me that still says ignorant people can be right.
Right. I know. I'm with you, but I'm telling you, when you read like chapter 1, I know you've read it, The Blueprint for Black Power, Dr. Amos Wilson would agree with him. Like Dr. Amos Wilson said, you can't, like, to some degree, oppressed people, they do play a part in their own oppression. And a matter of fact, in this particular chapter, I highlighted something that he says. I wrote beside it a choice. I'm gonna give you the page number right now. This is even in the Falsification of African Consciousness. Hold on. When we talk about a choice, hold on. Hold on. I'm gonna get the page number for you. Let me get the page. Here we go. Yep, 94. Who said 94?
No, I didn't. I was on it already, but
yeah, 94. He says, look at this. As noted by Chancellor Williams, the destruction of the Black civilization, the way we think, the way we behave, helps to create the kinds of victimization from which we suffer. The oppressive configuration the white man has assumed in the relationship to the Black man is in good part the result of the fact that we have permitted, hear the word, we have permitted ourselves to remain in a complementary subordinate configuration conducive to his oppression designs. The white man cannot be what he is unless we are what we are as a people. I'm going to say that again. He says the white man cannot be what he is unless we are what we are as a people. And one way of transforming the white man is through self-transformation. He says he cannot be what he is if we are not what we are. Therefore, we must take responsibility for the part of our personality, the part of our community, and the part of ourselves over which we can control and change that part.
Now, I made that quote, the white man cannot be what he is unless we are what we are as a people, as a Facebook quote. So I did that earlier today for a reason, because I wanted to elaborate. If I was to close, I wanted to close on that particular point. Now, here's my why I wanted to close on that particular point. When you think about the conditions that we are in, as unstable as it is, how do we measure it on a scale of progression? Are we really standing on the shoulders of our ancestors and moving our people forward? Or are we still in the same position that we was in the 60s, where we were trying to be just like the people that we continue to blame? So if we're going to make them God in one way, and then we're going to say we're gods in another way, how could they be equal to us if they spent so little time in history destroying everyone else's natural world to spread its dominance? That's why when you go back and you start from chapter 1 and you go through and you read chapter 2, you get to the whole point of the question. The white man is who he is because of us, right?
Right.
So I don't want to talk too much about it, but I just want people to think about what he's saying in that quote. That's how powerful it is. We just went through and seen that we just made the white man God. We did. We can't lie. We used his book, his teachings, and then we planted ourselves in his book and his teachings, and then we tried to reclaim his work. And then we tried to illustrate ourselves through his work, through his worldview. Think about what I'm saying here. Think about what's going on outside. It's somebody in the chat right now that is claiming his worldview. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Not unwillingly, because you're going to say, well, we were here first. And what? We was here first, but we're claiming something that just came about.
Facts.
So when we empowered him, we empowering him meant that we abandoned what we had and we inherited what he gave us. And then we turn around and we want to blame him for something when all he was doing was manipulating, or deceiving is the word that Dr. Amos Wilson used, deception, when he was using deception the entire time. So now, instead of you being entrenched in your Africanness and knowing who you are, you allowed the white man to be who he is because you didn't know who you was from the beginning.
Say that again, Brother Sean P, because we're going to close out on that note. Say that last line. Say that last line, brother.
You allowed the white man to be who he is because you didn't know who you were or who you.
That's a fact.
We lost. We are lost. No matter how much we can claim today, we still are lost. That's why I said the 60s. Have we really progressed from that era? And I say no, because the 60s, the baby booming era, our family structure took the biggest hit.
Yeah, that's a fact.
There's a Washington Post article about that.
Man, we got destroyed. We got destroyed. We were more sane during slavery than we were out of slavery and in the 60s because of all the push to destroy us. And then the 70s, this thing slow rolled us. The last 50 years was a slow rolling effect until it got us to the point that we were drug addicts. Then we start creating and birthing more drug addicts. And then the whole time, they had minimum issues and problems. And they were steady progressing as a people. How the heck did Mexicans come from Mexico and pass us as a people who've been here for hundreds of years having babies? So that the 60s was the destruction. And I know we're gonna get to a point where we talk about the 60s and we talk about other psychological problems, but a lot of this, that's why I said at the very beginning of chapter 2, when you read the first paragraph, when you opened up with the first paragraph, that was the foundation for all of our problems. That was it. But that's all I'm gonna say, man. I'm quiet. Thank you for having me on.
No, I appreciate it. I want you brothers to say your last words and close on out, brother. I don't know.
Malasela.
Brother Malasela. Go. What are your last words?
Say Methuselah, whatever you do, however you get out. It's all right. When to go back to the Kanye thing, it made me think when I was hearing y'all talk about it. I wanted to research the times, the different incidents, different moments when there were slave revolts, and when we did stand up and we did say we're not going to, choose to just comply. And I think that that's a part of, again, like a history that they will never teach us, because if they did, just like the type of history of the deep history of what really happened in Kemet and Kush, Dr. Asa Hillier used to talk about this. Like it just kind of straightens your spine up to learn these things. Different nations have a history that inspires and has a sort of sense of romantic nationalism around it. And so that's what they teach in order to inspire the people of the nation. So for Black people who are trying to be Pan-African, they're not going to teach that type of history. They're not going to teach about slave revolts, and they're not going to teach about a time when we were great, not that fully. They may teach little things here and there, but not for the political purpose of us being truly liberated. Because, like, this is again what Amos Wilson said: if they really taught the history right, we would be revolting today. And so that the point about if we're stuck in the situation where we were in the 60s, the brother was white, because there was to back that up, there was this Washington Post article that came out a while back saying that Black people really haven't moved forward much at all since 50 years ago, which would put us back in like 1968.
Right.
So that's a valid point. And we definitely do need to make better choices. But another thing that Dr. Amos Wilson brings up is that, yes, we have the system that we're under. He talks about the Skinner box. And so we're making better choices, but ultimately we need to make a series of choices that brings us to the point where we can get rid of the Skinner box. And the question is how to do that. because the choices that we're making right now, even as we try to make better choices, there's still choices where we are in this system, speaking English, and you know, doing things that, for all intents and purposes, are complying and are not out of bounds for what the white supremacists want us to do. So we're making these choices based on the environment within which we exist. That's my point.
Got you, brother. Brother Sean P. Any closing words? Any last words, brother?
Yeah, I just wanna, I kind of already pre-closed, but but I just want to thank you for even asking me to be on the panel today, and for even recommending this book to read and promoting it to our people. All the work that you and Sister Lima have done to put forth the book club and to inspire those of us who are like-minded individuals to read. I think that it is very important for us to read our ancestors' works who have fought to liberate us through education and to put us back on pace to being what we once was. And that's not to feel good, that is to inspire us to stand on their shoulders and do what we need to do, like Taka and Yara always say, we do what must be done.
That's
and
right.
We have to take into the account our failures and faults, just like we can take into account and romanticize our greatnesses. Every culture on this on this planet, or people, embrace some part of their culture that was great at some point in time. The Arabs will represent their little one golden year that they had. The Greco-Roman will recognize Rome as its greatness, and the Greeks will go crazy about their greatness. Everybody is allowed an opportunity to romance their greatness through history and to hold on to that. So in saying that, we as Africans must recognize our greatness, but we shall defend our greatness, but also study our failures and learn from our failures. So our failures were allowing the intermixing of outsiders inside of what we had going on. That was one of the failures.
Right.
And it allowed them to grow inside and under our roofs to effect where they could be of assistance to a whole nother people when they came in to invade us. And they would take up arms against us and defend the people that were coming in to harm us. So we have to remember that no matter our greater good, we still have to look at things with the right mindset to move our people forward. People may not just really agree with that, but my whole thing is about our Africanness, and we need to stand on our Africanness and push toward that. We will never solve our problems until we really put ourselves in check. Like we got to look in our closet and analyze our pants organized, are our shirts organized, are our shoes in the right order. And I'm saying that as people, that's how we gotta look at us. So are we dressing ourselves up appropriately for ourselves to move forward? And in order to do that, we got to arm ourselves with this African knowledge.
And you know what, another thing, and I'm going to propose this to Sister Lima, that we, because even, you know, you, and like you said, a lot of our great scholars and elders and ancestors, they constantly talk about, you know, the rebirth of African consciousness. They constantly talk about, you know, reestablishing our Africanity. But I guess the question is, how? And what does it mean to be, like you said, African? So I want to read Malife Asante's book, Africanity. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, I want to propose that book because I think that would be a nice book.
Afrocentricity?
Yeah, I said Afrocanity, Afrocentricity, yes.
Right, that's a good recommendation.
Yeah, by Malife Asante. So, you know, what does it mean to be an African? You know, what is the African worldview? I know Dr. Kobe Kambon in his book, The African Personality in America talks about the African worldview. What is African cosmology? So what does it mean to be an African woman, to be an African man, and get back to that. So
I want to give you something real quick. If you just give me a second, I want to see if this is something that you want to hear. It's trying to pull up for me, so just bear with me. My computer acts funny slow.
No, good, brother. While you pulling that up, family who's watching, please get your Meltrek. We talked about television. Brother Sean P. Talked about television and how Europeans use television as an instrument to propagate their propaganda, and how it's a tool for mind control. So we had to take control of what our babies watch. Later for Nickelodeon, Disney, Cartoon Network, Sprout. It's another one out there. I think I'm missing another one. Sprout, Nick Jr. and all of that. Later for that, tune into Meltrek. Mel is short for melanin. Trek means journey. So we're taking you on a journey to understand the history and culture of melanated people. We have 2 films available. Meltrek, Exploring Ancient Africa. Episode 1, we have episode 2. Meltrek, Exploring the Pre-Columbian Americas. Both films are available at edanimeproductions.com, and they are available on DVD and for digital download on the website. So all you have to do is go to Google, type in Meltrek, and links to purchase the films will pop up. We also have coloring books to go along with the films, and we also have storybooks to go along with the films. Okay, to go along with the films. So I'm telling you, it's time to get our kids. We talk about consciousness, but we have to understand that imagery. Our children, it says that children are great. There's a quote out there that says children are great imitators. So we have to give them something great to imitate, right? And so imagery is largely responsible for the shaping and molding of our minds. So we got to, inculcate our children with positive imagery of themselves in order to ensure the positive development of the self, of self-esteem, self-identity, and self-concept. So get your children Meltrek. Again, later for Disney, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, all that crap. Meltrek. Go ahead, brother Sean P.
All right, so that's facts, because my son saw you on the screen and he was like, he's like starstruck. Yeah, okay.
He's a Meltrek kid. I see him watching. He's a Meltrek kid.
Yep. Yeah. So you say, what is it to be African? So I just want to give you a piece of the article that we got coming out that's going to publish in Ben's journal. I can't wait for it. I'm a little excited about it, but I'm going to give you a piece of it real quick.
All right.
So I say, what is it to be African? To be African is not to be the first or to claim responsibility for other cultures' creations. To be African is not only to acknowledge your ability to set trends, but to embrace the greatness and the downfall of ancient civilizations that withstood decades of invasions and influence from foreign entities that sought out to diminish your role in history. To be African is to embrace one's culture and use it as a foundation to promote change. To not only romanticize your greatness, but use it as a teaching tool to implement new endeavors at times call for a forward-centeredness and a balance while facing the ills of racism, white supremacy. Then I quote, when our tactics become the objective, we fall victim to self-deception. Many of our thinkers have warned us of this danger of this view. There can be but one true objective for us in contemporary era: to reconstruct our lives on an Afrocentric base. Such a strategic objective finds its place in all areas of life. We must study African contact with Europe in search of pathology which derives Europeans toward avarice and exploitation in relationship to others. Strategy means that the Afrocentrist seeks to uncover all falsehoods, to expose fake issues, to demonstrate the overpowering effect of committed will in changing behaviors. Now that quote that I just said at the end, when I said when our tactics become, is from Ashante's work, 2003, page 111 of Afrocentricity.
I got it right here. And look, I don't want to look. If I turn my screen, brother, you know, I got the whole bookshelf right there. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I got it in the cut. So I'm definitely going to ask Sister Alima if she doesn't mind if we read that book. But that's beautiful, and I'm looking for. And now, this is the first article that's going to be published, or the second?
Well, Ben, I wrote 2 articles in this past month. So I did 4 presentations and wrote 2 articles, and I was adamant about having some work ready for Ben to have when he's ready to publish the journal. And
Okay.
he put one article on his website, which I think he's still going to put in the journal when it goes. I don't know yet.
Okay.
But this article, the title of it is called African Veneration. And he's holding, we sitting on this one. We're sitting on this one for the journal, for good purposes. And then by the time the journal can be published or is ready to go and made mainstream, I hope to have 2 more articles written by then for it, because I want to be able to defend some things from our perspective. So when he launches, and not only me, but I know it's other people who have either written work or who have certain type of poems or arts and crafts or anything creative that they do, he's putting it on there. And so if we're going to challenge mainstream, this is one of the ways that we challenge mainstream and we compete with mainstream. So man, I'm excited. I'm excited about the article. I'm excited for Brother Ben's journal. I'm excited for Sister Alima. She's not here to represent, man, but please get her book.
Yeah, I had it right next to me. That was going to be the next thing I said. Perceptions of a Misplaced African, Volume 1. She's coming out with Volume 2.
I can't wait.
Yeah,
I can't wait because she's prophetic. She speaks her mind. She put a lot of energy and work into it, and I think the community should appreciate her for who she is and what she does. I know that she may say that I kind of give her a little bit too much respect at time, or I'm always pushing her out front or whatever, but man, rightfully so, it's earned. You and her is rightfully earned. A lot of the sisters in the community that's willing to put forth the work and to take on the task and the sacrifice, you know what I'm saying? So I appreciate everybody. It gives me an opportunity to look at things differently. Because I'm not the best man in the world, anything like that. So when I see you guys busy and doing work and things of that nature, it inspires me. And even the work that Siobhan does, especially with my kids, and just being there teaching them, because she's like, you know, they go to school, but she really the teacher.
that's
And
right.
she sit at the table with them. Yeah, she sits at the table with them every day. It ain't a single. The only day she not sitting at the table with them is on Friday because they don't have no homework to turn in the next day. But yeah, it's important. So I think women are like I said, the backbone and the leaders of the revolution. I just really think that they're going to carry us into this new phase of who we are, this new identity of what we should have already established that we lost the ground. So if we can make up that ground and really get to work, it's going to be on your shoulders.
Now, I appreciate your words, brother. And I want my Marcy Warrior Clan shirt. I love the work that you guys are doing. I'm a huge Marcy Warrior Clan fan. And so I just want to thank you, brother Sean P., for all the work that you're doing. I watch your presentations. I try to catch you guys. I think you go live at 2 p.m. every Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. I think I get like the notification around 2 p.m. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. It's 2 p.m. on Eastern Standard, and it's 1 Central. And we try to be consistent, but today we went in at like 2:30 your time. But the presentation today is really only about 30 minutes. We talked the other 12 minutes, so it seems like it's about 42 minutes. It's less than an hour. Some good information for people who want to partake in actually looking at it, man. Feel free to go over to the Marcy Warrior Clan and check it out, or look on my Facebook page, Any Heret Kalfani. It's, you know, you will see me. I commented on Dr. Maat's Facebook on this live stream actually, and YouTube. So you see the name, just click on it and you'll see the link. View it, check it out, man. See what it is, see what it's about. You know, we talked about the importance of naming ceremonies. By the way, Dr. Maat, the story of Sanfan Diallo was actually the person that's reading that is actually Siobhan. The reason that I got her to read the story is because you women are so great at storytelling. Like, I don't care what nobody say. When a man hear a woman reading a book, like, yo, I think it's the most fascinating thing, the way you guys get into it. And she's so animated when she read the books. Like,
you have to be like, to keep your children's attention. Like, you have to be animated, or else they're gonna go to sleep on you, or they, you know, they'll lose interest. So you gotta be lively and you gotta get into it. Absolutely.
She did you know, I told her once, it's just, she think that she messed up in it, and she did an amazing job with it. So I was like, man, I'm running with it. I liked it. I told her that I liked it. She read this story so many times. She rehearsed it so many times that she probably can tell you the story word for word right now. And I think that that's dope, and that's beautiful, because there's a lot of more stories out there like the Sanfan Diallo story that we could teach our kids about it, and they can take to these stories, these African stories, and implement them in the night lessons, so to say, because, you know, every night there's a lesson at night. So that bedtime story, like, I think that's a key. So man, thank you again for having me, though.
And let me ask you a question. Do you think that Siobhan would be interested in joining like the RAM with me and Alima? Or does she have enough time to do it? Because I know she's busy with the kids and working and all of that. But
I will ask her. She might be a little like nervous about it, but I'll ask her.
Yeah, I think she would be. I think she would be an asset to the panel.
I think so too.
Absolutely. We need more females. Like, I mean, Sister Alima and I, we talk about it, you know, often, like, you know, like we need more females on the panel, more females who are just African centered, not spooked out, but just African centered. You know, we need more African centered females to come together and to start speaking out. YouTube videos, lectures, you name it. Like, we really need to start making noise. We have to. And so we're trying to find some dedicated, down and consistent sisters, you know. And I know if she's married to you, I already know what it is. So put it out there to her, brother Sean P, and let her know, you know, ask if she would want to join us on Sundays. I think it would be good for the panel, good for the viewers, you know, good for all of us.
Yeah. She ain't watching number TV at the moment, so yeah. Or listening to me talk to you. She does that a lot. Like, she act like she ain't really listening or nothing like that, and then she'll listen, and then she'll be like, well, you made a good point. So you
so yeah, she's listening. She's listening. But brother Malasela.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, brother, for coming on. I appreciate you. Are you going to be joining us weekly?
I'll join you for the next one, for the rest of the book.
Yeah, we got part one. Part three. We'll be discussing part 3 next week. The political psychology of Black consciousness. So we'll be getting into that, and that'll be it for the falsification of African consciousness. Sister Alima and I were thinking about reading Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery by Dr. Maat.MSU, or reading Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy Dugari. So we just wanted to read a couple of books before we got into the Yurugu. The Yurugu is a pretty thick book. It's like 694 pages. And so we wanted to go through at least a couple of small books. And what we mean by small is less than 200 pages. So we wanted to go through, you know, a couple of small books prior to reading the Yurugu, because I know that once we start reading that book at the top of the year, we'll be in it for the majority of the year. So we wanted to knock down as many books as possible.
Hey, I don't mean to cut you, but these books that you're talking about, the small books, they be the most impactful or most informative small books
Yeah.
And we have brother Kofi Paisai in the chat room, and I just want to say what's up to Kofi Paisai, Mr.
Peace, brother.
Iwa Baruru. Yeah, that's bad character. He full of bad character, Dr. Maat. I don't want to put it on the air because I don't want to mess up our good show.
Leave
But
brother Kofi alone. Leave him. I'm talking about we bad character is how do you say it? Baruku, Iwa Baruku?
yeah, Iwa Baruru.
Baruku.
Baruku. Yeah, Baruku.
Yeah,
We
Iwa
say
Baruku.
Baruku because of that K, but I think that the K sign or the initial is kind of like Wu or whatever, but you know,
Now that
yeah,
he's Iwa Riri. He's
yeah,
Iwa
Iwa Pele. Iwa Pele is good character.
Yeah, good character or beautiful character, right?
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful, a good character. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Iwa Pele is ideal character, right?
Correct.
I've been watching your presentations.
Nah, we all learning. So I think that you know, the more that we actually can learn some of these common phrases and words of our ancestors and the native languages over there, man, we could have these speech communities, and we'll be able to transcend our people who are trying to get out of this social structure that we're in. It gives us an escape route, and then we can start implementing some other things that can take us to another level. So, let
me ask you this: Iwa Pele, is that Swahili or is that Yoruba? Yoruba. That's Yoruba.
That's Yoruba. That's Yoruba all day long. And if you're reading any of this is what's funny to me, real quick. I know we're trying to end the show, y'all, but but this is a beautiful moment for me. So I'm reading the Holy Odu. So I'm going through all 256 Odus right now. And one of the things about it is that no matter which Odu it is, one of them is going to mention Iwa Pele. They all go back to character.
Yeah.
This and then the reason that I'm saying that is because if you grew up in a church, or if you dealt with Islam or all of these other things, some people like to say that it deals with morality. Not on the level of these African spiritual systems. They're not the way that the African spiritual systems deal with morality and character, the ethics. These things are really, we talked about transformation in this book that we just went over. We had Parson that talked about transformation. This is a part of transformation because it revitalizes you, and then it puts other things into perspective. Now, I will admit, I'm not the best. I'm not this nice guy all the time. I have a really bad, I can have a really bad temper, then I can be the sweetest person in the world, or I can ignore the rest of the world and only pay attention to a small few of people. I got all of these things that I'm battling inside of me because over time, it's just what I dealt with. So, or how I've been dealing with my stress or my pain or my anger. But when you read these Odus, or you study African spiritual systems, you immediately see your faults, and then you start addressing them. So that's transformation. That's a way out. You know, it has its mythology and all these other things and so on and so forth. However, but it's a journey, and when you know you're on the right path, you feel it. So man, we are making progress as a people if we continue to tune in to the book club, the Ram Book Club. We got to be here on Sundays to support Dr. Maat. Subscribe to the channel and Sister Alima. Subscribe to our other family channels, the Amara Squad, the Seshu, the Masi, the Dagger Squad. Subscribe, support, continue to build with us, because we're really trying to liberate our people and to set a precedence and to get them out of I don't want to cuss, but the S-hole that we're in many of our situations. And then if, you know, once you're able to start transforming within, then maybe that transformation will lead on to your family inside of your home. And then it can lead on to your neighbor that you can build with along the way. And this is how we then can grow from one neighbor to a few neighbors, and then from that neighborhood it turns back into a community, and then from a community to a city, or to another community, and another community to form a city, and then a citywide to a countywide to a statewide, and then we can see progress as a people. So it is a journey, man. We're not always going to agree on everything, but we got, we're making headway, we're making ground because we got the right people in the right places helping us do the right things. If we just stick to the plan and center ourselves in what our ancestors had laid forth for us, because they put forth a lot of work for us to learn from and study from it. So I appreciate you again, Dr. Ma, for having me on the panel.
I appreciate you.
For y'all doing the show, for Mail Track, to revitalizing the minds of my kids, because they have something that they can put into, that they can rock out to, and they can enjoy. So please support Mail Track, y'all. I promise you, it will not let you down. It will not let you down, won't let your kids down. I know I'm talking too much, man, but I gotta say it.
No, brother, you good. I appreciate you brothers coming on the panel, holding me down today. My co-host, she had some things to do, but my brothers came through for me. So I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your input, and most importantly, I appreciate who you brothers are. So with that said, I think you already said it all, brother Sean P. So I'm just going to say ashe with that, and I'll see you guys next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, at the next meeting, the next Resurgence of the African Mind Book Club meeting. Peace and power. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you guys next week, next Sunday. Peace and love.